Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal and I'm an artist, and today I'm going to show you guys how I made this 3D scene in Blender. I know it's been a while since I've done a high quality project like this, so I figured now is the time. So let's go. Everything starts with an inspiration. Every painting, sculpture, 3D model you see was sparked by something else that already exists. We call it references. For me, I wanted to try something different than what I did before, something with more meaning. As you all may or may not know, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. I wanted to showcase a part of my culture in this particular project. So I researched, and I found a photographer named Chris Anderson who is based in Trinidad and Tobago, and I really like his photography. Look at that. I really like how he captures the essence of my home. Especially this one. This one was the chosen one. I thought, yeah, I could accomplish something like this in 3D. So I opened up a brand new Blender file and I started off getting all of the base models in. So all of the blocking, so all of the biggest shapes I saw in the photograph, I basically made them all from a cube or plane and just started making the framework based on what I was seeing. Now, because I'm basing everything off of this picture, I was leaning more towards my own measurement skills and observation skills. So I was doing that on my own. So I say, okay, what is the distance between this model to this model, and just winging it and feeling out how I want it to look like based on the reference. I think the most important thing that I got down very early while doing this project was the camera angle. I had to make sure that the angle of my scene was exactly, or at least almost exactly, like how the picture was taken. So once I figured out the right angle and how high or how low the picture should be, I was able to then make the appropriate measurements in terms of the distance between each object. So even at that early stage in the project, I was already thinking ahead in terms of placement. I wish I could say that I continued working on this over the course of a couple of days or maybe weeks, but that was not the case. I actually started this project in June 10th, 2022, which was last year. So many things happened last year, I can't even remember where my mindset was, but I got distracted working on other projects, plus I was busy with a new job, and it was summer, and if you live in Canada, you want to spend as much time outside as possible because before you know it, it's gonna be winter again. So I had to take advantage of those few months. So I had to put it away, sadly, and then I started it back up in June of this year. I really hope that that was a decent enough explanation as to why I delayed working on this project. But to summarize it all, it wasn't the right timing. That's all I could say. Things happen, life happens, and yeah, it felt good to return to it and see where I left off and see what happens. I don't necessarily model people, just sticking to what I know, but This was a bit of a challenge for me because I don't really know the first thing when it comes to modeling people. There's only so much YouTube videos you could watch before it becomes very overwhelming. So I thought, you know what, let me just go for it and go with the knowledge that I already have and try to work it out on my own, right? So I started off with basic geometric shapes, spheres, cylinders, cubes, and just blocked out the pose. And then I added a subsurface modifier to the overall shape of the body. Again, this is the first time that I'm actually modeling a whole person. So obviously there are lots of mistakes that I've made, and seeing it right now, I could say that it was fun making those mistakes. That's one of the things that you just have to endure when you're 3D modeling, especially modeling something for the first time. Don't be so fixated on the perfect ending because it's not gonna look perfect in the end. Just concentrate on getting it done and move on. I added a sky texture not too soon after. That's because I was so eager to see what it would look like with a light source. And I was just figuring out the direction and playing around with the sun intensity and the rotation and elevation. That way I could measure out how large or how stretched out I want the shadow to be. I also added a light source on the inside of the house, and then I started with some texturing. Now I tried to add in a texture for the curtains, but I ended up not liking it, so I just decided to use a regular base color and reduce the alpha a bit, and that's about it. But for a majority of my textures, I used Polyhaven, and Polyhaven is a site where you can download textures, HDRIs, as well as 3D models. The best part about Polyhaven is that their textures are really high quality, so I recommend using Polyhaven. It's free, so you could just go on the site, find whatever texture that you're looking for, download it, done. No sign up required, nothing like that. Just download it and that's it. Now I'm getting more detail oriented, and this is the part where I messed up. I used the sculpting tool and I checked on the Dino Topo button because I wanted it to be more fleshed out and more organic looking. Big mistake. I didn't realize that I was sculpting it using triangles instead of quads. By the time I realized what I had done, it was already too late. I was not going back to start over again. So I said, you know what? What's done is done. Leave it. And I kept going. It's come to the point now where the more mistakes I make, the more determined I am to finish it. For the dress, I didn't want to use a regular image texture like how I was using before. I wanted to use texture painting, which is where I will take a brush tool in Blender and literally paint over the 3D model. Similar to Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint or Krita, it's the same idea. The same way you would paint on a blank canvas, I would paint over the 3D object. And this way, I have a bit more freedom and creativity to just relax and paint my flowers however I see fit. I began adding more lights to give a more a natural, realistic look. For the first time, I'm using the plant library that's available in the Blender market. So I downloaded it, installed all of the different types of plant leaves and trees and bushes and all that stuff, and I just dragged it into the scene from my asset library. I don't know if you might notice, but the wood texture I initially had at the front of the house, I changed it because I didn't really like how it looked, but I changed it to another texture and I gave it a nice reflective kind of look, and I preferred that one instead. That one completed the look. For the framework of the entrance of the house, I basically took the image and I opened it as a flat surface in Blender, and I basically traced over the curvature of the framework using vertices, and then I converted it into a mesh. Everything else regarding the design, I improvised. Then I decided to be a bit more creative in this scene, so I added a chair and a plant in the front. At this point, anything that I missed in the reference, anything that I never noticed before, I'm just adding it in. So if there's an indent in the ceiling, I'm adding the indent. Even though you don't necessarily see it at first glance, but those little details are there, and it just gives the viewer, you, more things to admire about the scene. A lot of the houses back home in the Caribbean, they have this sort of pattern design either in the front of the house or on the gate, and you see it specifically with the older type of houses, like the ones that were built many years ago. It just makes them more interesting rather than these modern day houses today. Those are cool too, I guess, but something about these types of houses is just so much history. I'm happy that I was able to capture that in the form of a 3D modeling scene in Blender. And to think I had this idea since last year. It just goes to show that with a little bit of patience and determination and working smarter, you should be able to do this as well. Don't be too hard on yourself at first, because you can never know what you're able to accomplish within a year. And in this case, what I was able to complete this summer is way better than what I did last year. I'm very thankful to God that I'm able to improve so much. So there you have it. Tanty with her coquet broom, or the neighbor next door, or Granny. Actually, this picture does remind me of my grandmother, God rest her soul. Many years ago, I remember seeing her sweeping the floor in her gallery. Brings back a lot of memories. I guess this is why I put extra care and effort into this project, because it just reminded me so much of back home and where I grew up, and I'm sure those of you who are also from the Caribbean can relate. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you like this video. Thank you all so much for watching the full thing, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.